Let's hear more about that.
Yeah,
You mentioned how compassion will increase
yeah,
vagal tone, and I
yeah,
know, as you mentioned, that studying the vagus nerve is something that's been central in your
yeah.
work, and that you've even studied people who you call vagal superstars. And I wanted to know, like, what makes someone a vagal superstar,
Yeah.
and yeah, and how does practicing compassion help attune my vagus nerve and make it work well. Help me understand all this stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate how deeply you're reading all the obscure scholarship we've done, Tami. So thank you. You know, as we started, sympathy is our strongest instinct, but so too is gratitude and awe and reverence and empathy, etc. There are a lot there, that Darwin wrote about, David Hume, the Scottish philosopher, others. But, you know, the field and the world started to get convinced by things like the oxytocin, the neuropeptide that's produced in your hypothalamus that makes you cooperate with other people. Whoa, there's a chemical that helps us with love and cooperation. Certain regions of the brain that got a lot of attention. And then the vagus nerve. And the autonomic nervous system is a couple dozen bundles of neurons that come out of your spinal cord, that go to different regions of your body that project into your brain. And one of them is coming out, it's a cranial nerve that comes out of the top of your spinal cord. It's a bundle of nerves called the vagus nerve. It's the largest bundle of nerves in the mammalian nervous system. And Steve Porges first made this argument that our audience probably has heard of, like, this is a really interesting bundle of nerves anatomically because it activates, it intersects with vocal muscles, facial muscles. It slows your breathing, it deepens your breathing, slows your heart rate, communicates with digestive organs, and projects into your gut and takes in information from the flora and fauna in your gut, the microbiome. And anatomically, Porges said, this kind of looks like it helps people care for others. The vagus nerve supports shifts in the body that help us care. And our lab has found, if I feel compassion in the moment, elevated vagus nerve activation. If I feel awe for being connected to meaningful things in life, vagus nerve activation. Other laboratories, if I have high vagal tone, I handle stress better, trauma better. I get along better with other people around me. And that led us, so it feels like it's about cooperation, connection, and caring and openness, very broadly. The vagal superstar's idea was there's individual variation in everything. Every human trait, as Darwin wrote about, is subject to variation, lots of variation. And we started to wonder about these people who have extreme levels of vagal tone, and they, vagal superstars, and they're very interesting, which is they share more, they respond to other people's suffering more intensively. Regrettably, when it gets too extreme, they become too connected to other people. They don't protect themselves, right? So they will connect to dangerous people and strangers that they shouldn't connect to. So, but on balance, you want to kind of cultivate vagal tone through compassion and breathing and yoga and etc., nature, and but not get too extreme.
High vagal tone. That's the right way
Yeah.
to language that. What does that mean exactly?
Well, we measure the vagus nerve by looking at the covariation, how much your heart rate rhythm, and then your slower rhythm of your respiratory system, your breathing, inhalation, exhalation. And you look at those two rhythms mathematically and look at their linkage as a way to make a measure of vagal tone. The stronger the linkage, in particular, as we exhale, how that's linked to shifts in heart rate, is indicative of more vagus nerve activation. And on balance, the greater the linkage of respiration and cardiovascular cycling indexes greater vagal tone, and that predicts a lot of these benefits we've talked about of just handling stress better, feeling more optimistic, feeling like you're more connected to people around you, feeling happier, having a better health profile, all replicated in studies. So it's good news. So it's measured by looking at the covariation of the heart and breathing.
Right. Now, but you said an interesting thing
Uh-oh.
in everyday language, kind of, yes, it's wonderful to care, but not over care. That's my
Yeah.
language, like over care. So how does that apply to the health professional?
Man.
When do they find themselves, quote unquote, over caring? It's their job to care.
Yeah. That's one of the, I really, you just gave me tingles thinking about this. I really, you know, we talk about compassion burnout in the healthcare industry. And I really experienced this personally. You know, my brother, you and I've talked about this, Tami. You know, I was as close to him as any human being, just given the nature of our childhood. He was 1 year younger than me. And he got colon cancer. And it was 2 years of just horror, you know, and as any healthcare provider out there will know, man, if colon cancer goes wrong, it's a mess. You know, you lose a ton of weight, you can't eat, it's really painful. It's in the abdomen, it's a mess. Yeah. And as is a lot of end of life stuff. And I had that experience too, where here was this guy, he and I had done everything together, from basketball to, you know, traveling to Mexico, you know, just the closest of brothers. And watching him really succumb, I was fried because of too much compassion. You know, I was just like, you know, every instant of the day, I was like, how can I help? Watching his body, you know, he was 205 pounds. He, at one point, I went up to this little hospital he was in. He was in the emergency room. He's 147 pounds. It's just like, you know, it was so much for me to handle. And then I read Roshi Joan Halifax's Being with Dying. And I teach this to healthcare providers, which is, you know, this is part of life, watching others suffer. You know, make sure you name their suffering as their suffering. It's not your suffering. You know, take a deep breath and recognize you are different. Remember that those people want you to be happy, and they want you, they're dying, or they have colon cancer, or they're suffering physically. They want you to be strong. And in fact, in one of my last moments with my brother, he said, you know, Dacher, you will be happy. You know, he knew this was overwhelming me through too much compassion. And when he said that, it reminded me, like Roshi Joan Halifax, like, what they want from you is to be giving and to be strong. And so I think there are these principles for healthcare providers about watch out for too much pure empathic distress, taking in other people's suffering. Remember why you're here, name it, separate it, and find agency in that awareness. And I felt it transformed me to read Roshi Joan's writings on that, who works with healthcare providers through her hospice work, apply it to my own profound experience of compassion, watching someone die, and then teach it, right, and ground it in neuroscience.